Hello and welcome back to FT Business School. Overpriced and irrelevant to modern business. That's the sort of criticism often bandied around these days about MBA degrees, and in particular about the US 2-year campus-based programme. Declining application numbers to these programmes have even led some deans to predict the demise of the full-time MBA and many of the business schools that teach it. It is against this background that Matt Slaughter will take over as Dean of the Tuck School at Dartmouth College in the US this summer. Professor Slaughter, what's your reaction to that some business schools and MBA programmes will go out of business? Because Tuck is one of the schools that depends almost entirely for its reputation and its own income on the MBA programme, isn't it?
Sure. So we at Tuck look very closely at the data, and what you see is demand for the full-time 2-year residential MBA is still present around the world, but it's not growing by gangbusters. And so I think that leads us to think of a couple things at Tuck. One is we need to continue to try to strive to create one of the best MBA experiences on the planet. So we've long strived to be creative in terms of how we bring together great students, match them with great faculty, and importantly, create the kind of curriculum that the companies really value. And to date, the students at Tuck are still doing extremely well in their learning and in the job market.
But aren't you competing for a shrinking piece of the market?
So great question. There's still a cadre of people around the world that have amazing work experiences, high academic achievement, and that's the cohort that we really have long focused on at the Tuck School. And there's still strong demand that we're seeing at Tuck for that. Our applications in the recent year, for example, were up by several percent. But at the same time, on your good point, we think about wanting to continue with the Tuck tradition of providing education where it's relevant in the needs of the world of business. I mean, if you think about the history of Tuck, actually, it was created as a pretty dramatic innovation in higher education. So the school was created at a time where some business leaders and academic leaders in the US realized that we didn't quite have the right educational framework for this emerging set of business and management leaders in this emerging market called the United States. So we're looking at new opportunities, like in the US, for example, the near undergraduate space.
Yes, but I mean, if you look at Tuck, which had the first MBA programme in the world, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
I mean, how much has changed since then? It's still a 2-year residential model. It's still taught in Hanover, New Hampshire. What has changed in over 100 years?
Oh, so actually a lot has changed. So on the surface, yes, students still come to Hanover and they still spend a chunk of time there. I think at least a couple of things are fundamentally different. One is the nature of the students. So you go back a few generations, and what you saw was most students at Tuck, like at peer business schools, they came straight from undergraduate studies. Today at Tuck, like at other top business schools, we attract students who've had several years of work experience, actually, because they have their undergraduate studies, but to have the top business education, they really need to have several years of work experience to draw on it. And the second thing I think actually is what we're doing with students when they're with us in Hanover is quite different than what it used to be. Much more experiential learning, and importantly, we're doing things with them where we take them out of Hanover increasingly around the world. So we have a new global experience requirement actually at the Tuck School, where to earn a Tuck degree now, you have to take at least one course led by Tuck somewhere else on the planet, in London, in China, in India, somewhere in Africa, for example.
But to come back to that initial criticism that these degrees are very, very expensive. I mean, how do you persuade students who aren't an elite group of wealthy students to actually come to Tuck?
Sure, no, that's really important. So we focus on trying to generate a personal and a financial high rate of return for these students. So if you think about the dollars and cents, you're absolutely right. It is a massive investment we're asking students to make, which is why we take seriously the focus we have on generating experience that's valued in the job market. Our students in recent years, in terms of who's getting jobs, at what type of companies, are they transforming the career opportunities, are they earning the kind of income they need to make a return on that? We're still doing quite well on that. And so that's really important for us to ensure that not just the learning is important, but the financial return is there as well.
But I think a lot of deans, when they hear you say this, are just going to say, they're just burying their heads in the sand, and they can afford to do that because they've got such a strong alumni and endowment base. I mean, what would you say to that?
So that matters a lot. Part of what the Tuck students are receiving when they're with us and become part of the Tuck community is a connection to the Tuck Alumni Network, for example. We've got about 10,000 living Tuck alums right now. And part of what's amazing, they're in close to 70 countries around the world. They are a dedicated group of business leaders in all walks of industry who, when they are telephoned or emailed by a current Tuck student, they return those emails and those phone calls. And that's part of what allows the Tuck students to transform what they've done before and build beyond it. At the same time, we are aware that if you look, for example, at what's happened to law schools in America, if the labor market and the value that we're generating at the Tuck School isn't valued by the companies, then we're going to have an issue. And so I think maintaining really close contact with the companies around the world that are the key recruiters for us is essential to make sure that we're delivering in and out of the classroom what those companies need.
Professor Slaughter, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
To watch more interviews with top US Business School deans, go to ft.com/business education.